Hey folks, how you doing? Hey folks, this is your girl Shirley King, and we're here for our June series. And this is just for June, so make sure you call somebody and make sure they get in on this every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. I am here with my dear friend, an amazing human being, just amazing person, Dr. Vernell Deslonde, but we call her Dr. Vernell. Vernell, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'm so excited to be here. And a lot of people just call me V or Dr. V. You know what I mean? So it's just it make it formal, informal, whatever way you want. But I'm so excited to be here and to be a guest on this show. So thank you so much, Shirley, for inviting me.
Of course, you're perfect for this particular subject,
Mm-hmm.
talking about the Are You Happy model within the reimagining success. I've been talking about this for several weeks now. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I talked about the first research I did. Everyone is listening. That first week, I talked about I asked some questions, and it came back with you folks talking about that you really just want to know how to really be soulfully happy, because there's a difference in surface happiness and soulful happiness, which is really fulfillment. That's
Mm-hmm.
how fulfillment is created. The word is full and fill, full and fill. You're never
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be depleted. um and I even changed the way I say, I want to just be a servant leader and leave empty when I leave this earth. No, I wasn't meant to leave empty. I was meant to leave on F, on fulfillment. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm really doing the work that I'm called to do. So that is why it's important that you really lean in on your purpose and calling versus your skill, because skills are limited. Like, we learned
Mm-hmm.
them over time. We were born with our purpose and calling. It never dissipates. It
Mm-hmm.
only increases. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, Dr. Vernell,
Okay.
reimagining success, and we're going to be talking about that through the Are You Happy model.
Okay.
So the Are You Happy model is hope, being authentic, having peace. We talk about, living in your purpose and calling versus your skill,
Mm-hmm.
and your yes. Dr. Vernell, what is hope for you, though?
Yeah, again, so for me, and again, I don't know kind of like the background of your listeners, but I was in a season in my life where I felt hopeless because everything about myself and about my value was connected to marriage, who I was married to, the type of career that I had, the fact that I had kids, the fact that I had a 5 bedroom, 5 bath house, that I was able to travel to these different places. And when my marriage ended unexpectedly, and the fact that I did not want it, I felt so broken and so lost. My self worth had plummeted, and I did not have any hope, right? I didn't have any hope in that this marriage would be restored, that my life could be more than, what it was at that particular point in time. And so the moment that I linked up with God for me is when my hope was restored. So all that I am and all that I believe and all that I think is found in Him. And so that's where my hope really comes from. It is the hope in the unseen. Um, and it is believing beyond where I am. And so that's kind of like when I think of hope.
Believing beyond where you are. And you started off with saying, don't quite know who the listeners are, but my listeners are folks that are already reimagining success,
Mm-hmm.
or they really don't know that they haven't yet and got to a point with the reimagining success. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
are in an impasse. You just described exactly what that impasse looks like and sounds like. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
thought you should be happy with the 5 bedroom, 5 bathroom house. Everyone thought, with all the stuff and everything that they saw,
Mm-hmm.
everything that you had, and everything that you have, because it was there, it was real.
Mm-hmm.
You thought you should be happy as well. And
Mm-hmm.
that is where, at some point, whether it be a marriage or whatever that impasse is,
Mm-hmm.
you had to go through something difficult. But some of us, we're not getting ready to divorce, but we're still in the middle of that impasse because we're
Yeah.
leaning in on our skill. Like, it is like, And it right now it has kind of ran its course, but you don't
Mhm.
know how to pivot and what to do next.
Yeah, I think for me too, I operated in a way that I thought this is what fulfillment looked like. It was an equation. It was, and I thought all women did it, right? It was the marriage, plus the career, plus the kids equals purpose and fulfillment. And
Ah,
so then when all of that stuff kind of like crashed and burned for me, and I did not have any happiness, I didn't have any hopefulness, and I did not have peace and purpose in my life. And when I linked up with God and I found out that's where all of those things reside,
yeah.
everything for me changed.
Y'all be talking about where the money reside. I'm talking about where my whole life is residing,
Hmm.
and that is in God. My whole life resides, because that's who deposited its purpose
Hmm.
in that calling. And I have this thing about a calling, right? Like it's called the calling because at some point it's going to begin calling you. That's where
Hmm.
the uneasiness in your soul, that thriving that you cannot describe. Nothing you eat, nothing you do, any place you go, it doesn't dissipate that thriving because your calling is doing just that. It is uneasy and it's calling you. That's why you're agitated. That's why you're uneasy. You're right in the middle of that impasse.
Hmm. Hmm. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So that's what that for me, hope in your happy model. Um, yeah. When I think about that.
And although I didn't create the spelling of happy, right? But as I was, going through the results of me asking questions to different groups I was in, and I realized that everyone is really trying to get to that soulful happiness. As I really unpacked happy and went through really what it means, the acronym just kind of was thrown out there at me. But if you follow me for a while, you know that I kind of like acronyms because it makes it
Hmm.
easy for someone to remember something that's very important. The next one is being authentic. Dr. Vernell, how do you remain authentic to your values regardless of where you are or who you are with?
Um, I try. I try to be myself at all times. I try not to be somebody else. I believe that God will check me when I try to, when I start looking around too much and I'm looking at what other people doing. I'm looking at how other people are living. I'm listening to what other people are saying. And I feel like the Holy Spirit will check me and right. And so that it's reeling myself back in and being okay with who I am and who God has called and created me to be, recognizing that I don't have to do it like someone else because I wasn't created like someone else. And so when I stay in my lane of authenticity, right, for me, that's where I thrive. And that's where I excel the most. Not trying to be like this person or that person, but just
Yes.
being the authentic version of who God called and created me to be.
And that's why that purpose and calling is important, because without really leaning into your purpose and calling, it's hard to be authentic. You will begin to maybe not be who you are because you don't particularly know what you're here for.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you lean in on your skill, it also helps you only use a portion of your brain. I remember when I really leaned into my purpose and my calling, like it exploded the things that I didn't realize I was picking up great things along the way. But it was because I needed to use it for the women I was impacting.
Hmm.
I didn't have to use it for the people I was sitting in that boardroom with. I needed to use it
Hmm.
for the women that I was called to. And that is when those other things that I've experienced and learned and didn't realize I was consuming, that's
Hmm.
when it began to be ignited for me.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, even though God has gifted all of us with different, skills, abilities, and talents, um, you can have those things independent of Him, right?
Hmm.
So you can exercise your skill. You cannot walk in calling without God.
Yep.
So one you can do with, the other you can do without.
Hmm.
But the beauty is when you bring it all together.
where my whole life resides.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Our next part of the happy model is peace. And
Mhm.
it's so, for hope, being authentic, and then peace to come after that. When I look at that and I go, it's really hard to have peace when I don't have hope, because that means I have no expectation for great things. It's hard to have
Mhm.
peace when I can't be authentic, because there's always, I'm going to be uncomfortable within myself if I'm not authentic. But
Mhm.
everybody sees peace different, does peace differently. And Dr. Vernell, how do you do peace?
So kind of like taking it back to your age, right? And how all these things are intertwined and interconnected.
Yeah,
I believe your hope is connected to your belief systems. If you don't believe certain things to be true, then therefore you won't have hope and you won't have the expectation that these things will come to pass.
that's
So
right.
my peace is connected to what I believe and who I believe in, and therefore is connected to the hope that I have, and it allows me to be my authentic self. And so it doesn't mean that my circumstances have to be great or ideal for me to experience peace, because my peace is not connected to these surface things, right? It is now connected to who God is and who I am through Him, if that makes any sense.
Well, that makes all the sense. And
Hmm.
some of you listening have been. I think this is the third guest we've had, and we've been talking about the Are You Happy model. If you haven't yet started kind of writing down what all those things are to you, because if
Hmm.
you couldn't, if you when I asked the guest, like I asked Dr. Vernell, and she knew what it was for her, but if I were to ask you this question, do you know? Do you know really what hope is for you?
Hmm.
Can you be authentic wherever you are with whoever you are? And do you have peace in it? How do you do peace itself?
Hmm.
I know my peace is embedded in my relationship with God.
Hmm.
And I like to say all the time, whether you serve my God, or
Hmm.
you have a spirituality that's different, the best thing about that is that I don't get to depend on me.
Mm. Yes, 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 and amen. Yeah, because I believe what the Bible says when Jesus said that He leaves His peace, not the same as the world has, but is His peace. So that means it means something very different. It means that it's not going to look like what the world considers to be peace. Because I was in a season in my life when I tell you all hell was breaking loose, it was breaking loose. Not just being left, having over $1 million in debt, been pursued by the IRS for over $100,000 in unpaid taxes that I did not know that I had. Then I got sued for $30,000 for work that was done in the house that I thought was already paid, and my kids were named in the lawsuit. Yet I still had peace, and I can barely describe it to people. I did not have gas to put in my car, but I had peace. I was checking one credit card to see if I had $20 on it, checking the other credit card to see if I had 15, trying to put a little bit of gas in my tank. But yet I had peace. Why? Because my peace was not connected to whether I had gas, whether my rent was paid, but my peace was connected to God. And I knew that He would provide and take care of me and my kids. It wasn't always what we wanted, but He always gave us what we needed and then some. So yes.
So I'm sure you can figure out why Dr. Vernell was another pivotal guest for the Wednesday nights reimagining success. And we're going through with different guests the Are You Happy model, because you can't get, if you show up next Wednesday for the Reimagining Success Masterclass, if you
Hmm.
hadn't done this part yet, then it's going to be hard for you to imagine when I actually deliver the framework for reimagining success. You see that link on the screen. You can register for next Wednesday, the 29th at 7 p.m. for the Reimagine Success Masterclass. But these Wednesday nights are critical. So if this is your first time, go back to the first two. And we have one more next week before the masterclass itself. But it's pivotal that you discover really where does your happiness lie,
Hmm.
and go through that 5 tier model. We still have two more. We're not done. Go through go through hope. You being authentic. In your peace. Like there was a time in my life that social anxiety was something I didn't have a name for it, but it's
Mhm.
exactly how I lived every day, going on a different blood pressure pill and it's increasing. Got to a high amount, and then they
Mhm.
said we would have to give you another one. But
Mm.
on the outside, man, y'all thought Shirley had it together.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
all the things that I was doing in my career, in my business, in my family, because family was my children were thriving. I should have been happy, but I hit an impasse. There are various reasons. Newly divorced in December, so there are various reasons why. But one of the biggest reasons is that I had not really redesigned what success really was for me, what it looked like, what it
Mhm.
felt like was for me.
Mhm.
And I'm a
Mm.
Gen Xer. So you know how you grew up as a Gen Xer. They tell you you better get a good job because that's what you need to have.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I was able to obliterate all the things that kept me in that social anxiety part. And I didn't know that I was dealing with that. Of course, therapy did teach me that, but I didn't
Mhm.
know that that's what I was dealing with. And I look back at it and go, God has always been in my life.
Mhm.
What's the difference? I
Yeah.
was letting things, people, what I thought, what I was like, what I learned along the way, really create what success was for me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I definitely recommend doing some soul searching, deep diving into what happiness really means, and not just from a superficial standpoint.
Absolutely. Which is why being authentic, that's a deep one. You're going to have to really work hard at that one and really dig deep in that one. But we're going to go to purpose.
Mhm. Mhm.
And simply put, purpose is what we're supposed to do. That's why
Mhm.
I think the uneasiness that happens when you're only leaning in on your skill, because your skill is learned. You have to have some experiences and sometimes, I'm sorry, sometimes education, etc., in order to increase in your skills. But again, your purpose and calling is what you were born to do. It is what you're supposed to do. So if you're supposed to do it, then I believe that at some point you become uneasy and not do it. So, Dr. Vernell, what are you supposed to do?
Just me personally.
Yes, you personally.
Me personally. So I believe that God has called and created me to do a number of things, not just to be a parent, but also to educate, to teach, to lead, to guide, to comfort, to strengthen, to support, to encourage. I always call myself the female Barnabas in the Bible. You want to be encouraged? Hit me up. I'm going to
She's right though, you all. She's right. She's
yeah,
right.
I'm going to encourage the heck out of people. And so I believe that God has allowed me to use all of those things that I just mentioned to really help other people. Why? Because purpose is never about you. It's always about blessing other people. So it's not about the things, all these things that you want, all these things that you want to do. And sometimes people just want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be on these major platforms, but oftentimes we may not have the character to sustain it once we get there. But God might want us to just be there to support other people and allow them to be elevated. You just never know. And so I try to be open to what God is calling me to do, where He's leading me. And it's always something uncomfortable, something that it scares the daylights out of me. It's something that I have to talk to myself and talk myself into it instead of talking myself out of it. I'm not even going to lie. I've gotten so many prophetic words, and I'm telling you right now, I wanted to run and hide because I was like, not me. That's not gonna be me out there, Father. But yeah, so I really, when I think about purpose, it is God using you to support and help other people um, through this journey that we call life. It is never about me. It is about me becoming who God has called and created me to do so that I can support and help other people and be that solution to the problems that other people might have. So that's kind of like how I think about purpose for myself.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're supposed to do though. Was there a time when you weren't doing that And then like describe like what that felt like to you. Like how did you, I know for me it was just it has to be something else. But I just couldn't put my finger on it. But I was doing it just not full out. So for you, describe when you kind of you weren't doing it and you knew that you needed to do it, or you didn't hadn't yet discovered what you were supposed to do. Describe
Um,
what it felt like.
yeah, so I grew up in church. I was raised in the church, but I didn't know God. So I didn't know nothing about calling. I didn't know anything about purpose, and I didn't know what God's voice sounded like. So He could have been talking to me all along, and I wouldn't have even recognized it. Okay, and then when, and then when all hell broke loose in my life, and I didn't know how to pray for myself and pray myself through the hurt and the pain, and my best friend, I felt like she had this phenomenal relationship with God, and every time she prayed for me, I had this peace. I felt like peace was passing through me, and I wanted more of it because I was tormented in my mind and in my spirit. And so during that season, it wasn't so much about me not doing it, is I didn't know it, right? I didn't know who God was, and I didn't know anything about this divine agitation that He was giving. I just thought like, oh God, what am I supposed to do? And it wasn't really connected to why I was created in any way. And then when I did link up with God, for me, it is really leaning into to Him and hearing His voice. And oftentimes with me, and I don't know about other people, God will always call me to do stuff I just don't want to do. He will call me to pray for people I don't even like, and I know don't like me. Um, but I've learned to out of obedience. Why? Because God says His ways are not our ways, and so while culture might say, they don't like you, then you don't need to be bothered with them. Or why should you pray for them? Why should you bless them? Why should you do something for them? They're not going to appreciate it. But when God says to do it, there is this release that takes place within from your obedience, right? And the Bible describes it as a fragrant offering, right, to God. Like it smells good to Him when we are obedient. And so for me, it is, Lord, how can I help other people? How can I please other people? That's me operating in the purpose that God had created me to do. And that's all I know now that I've linked up with God, because before I didn't know. So I recognize when I'm fighting against the thing that He might have called me to do. But I've learned how to do these things afraid. I've learned how to do it even when I don't know what the next step is. Right. When I told you, like before we were chatting,
Yeah.
God told me to write the book. I was like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now that I've written it? Okay, well, now I have to go ahead and figure out how to get this thing uploaded, how to get it published. I was like, how to get it formatted, all of these different pieces, then like get to the point of marketing. How long do you market a book? It was all these different nuances, but every time I took a step of faith, God gave me the next step, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it has been learning how to hear His voice and to be obedient. And so I would love to say that I'm just Johnny on the spot when I hear God's voice. It's not always like that. I got to talk to myself first sometimes before I start operating and moving. So yeah, it's really interesting. I try not to dwell in it too long. Like, okay, Lord, I don't want to not do what you said, but can we talk about it? One-sided, I'll tell you that much. But I still always try to engage. Yeah.
Yep. And in the middle of that, wherever you are in this impasse, that's what I call it. Recently, I discovered the word enmeshment. I was reading a book or reading an article or something like that, and
Hmm.
what it means is that you have taken over some experiences and even some habits, so of that something that you're involved in so much that you're unable to recognize what's actually you authentically and what that thing is authentically, or that person is authentically, or that place is. You can't differentiate at some point the two
Hmm.
of them.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what that impasse probably feels like for some of you. You're happy, but you're uneasy. That sofa throbbing won't dissipate. The things that you love to do, that for some reason you can't thrive in it now, those things that exhilarates you. And I go back to, until you begin leaning on that purpose in your calling and more less than your skill, that's going to stay there. That discontentment, and Dr. Vernell said it, divine agitation.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. When you talk about, a lot of people think about happiness is situational. So yeah, I'm happy in this moment, and then I'm not happy, right? I think what you're talking about is divine happiness, right? Because there's something divine is connected
Mhm.
to your calling, to your purpose, to
Yes.
that place of peace and fulfillment. So there's a divine attachment when you talk about happiness. Other people might talk about it in the context of situational happiness. Now I'll be happy when I get these things.
Then
I'll
that's
be
not
happy when
happy
I
though.
get this
That's
thing.
not happiness though.
Uh-huh. But that's
That's
the way
just
that culture defines
mm-hmm,
happiness,
mm-hmm,
right? And so then
mm-hmm.
if you are living the way that culture lives, if you're listening the way that culture is talking about, then therefore when people, the general you think about success is going to be connected to these situational
Yeah.
things where they've experienced some form of happiness. You're talking about, let's reimagine what success really looks like. Instead of it being this happiness the way the world thinks about it, we're going to talk about divine happiness. Hmm.
Yes, that's that soulful divine happiness. Absolutely, you got it right. Like you put the needle right where it's supposed to be. You get it right on the head, Dr.
Hmm.
Vernell. That divine happiness, that soulful happiness.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the last portion of the Are You Happy model is a yes. A yes is a simple word, but your yes, I think, can literally discombobulate, or it can support something, or it can discombobulate something. But it
Hmm.
only can discombobulate it if you say yes because you don't know how to say no. And when you're in the middle of that impasse, that's when you begin to say yes because you're searching for that divine happiness. You're searching for more situations,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that you can feel happy.
Hmm.
Dr. Renee, let's talk about your yes, and how you make sure that you say yes to those things that are aligned and not unaligned with your calling, your purpose, and your values. Your values, we'll be talking about that in the master class, how important our values are and what they actually define for us.
Hmm. Yeah. So for me, it is, my yes is connected to saying yes to God. It doesn't mean I'm gonna say yes to all these people just because they asked me to do something, and they might say, "Well, God told me." Listen, if He hasn't told me, I'm not necessarily gonna say yes to it. And so I think it's about having that relationship with Him and knowing when to say yes. And then there are times when you might say, "Well, maybe." Right. And you can operate on it. Maybe like, God, I really don't know, but maybe you are calling me to say yes. And so sometimes I will say yes based on a maybe, like maybe this could be God, maybe it is. And then one of the things that I remember Pastor Darius Daniels had talked about, Dr. Darius Daniels, is don't always be so wedded to when you've said a yes. Sometimes you have to walk that back because God may have spoken to you to say, I didn't tell you to do that. I didn't call you to do that. And but if they love you the way that you think that they do, then they will be okay, right? With
Mhm.
you walking that back, walking your yes back. So I know people who are so wedded and committed to when they say yes, they're gonna do yes regardless. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
because you're
Mhm.
also supposed to operate
Mhm.
in wisdom. It may not be
Mhm.
wise to honor that yes. And
That's
so
good.
it's one of those things. It's like seek wisdom, ask God about it. Like, Father,
That's
is this,
good.
I can operate on the maybe, but if I'm starting to feel really uncomfortable, and if I'm feeling like, Lord, this is like you not a part of this, then I will say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do that.
That's
Um,
good.
but that's also me being my authentic self. I don't just do things just because people want me to do them. I feel like I'm led into doing certain things. And then other things I'm like, okay, well, Lord, I pray that somebody will be blessed by it. But if I start feeling really uncomfortable about it, like, and I'm not talking about uncomfortable, like, oh God, I just don't want to speak in front of all these people. That's not what I mean. I
Mm-mm.
mean that there is this divine agitation that is taking place, and it
Mhm.
started causing me to question and to doubt that the Lord called me to do that. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And again, your yes, when you not only don't know how to say no, but when you don't know how to take that back, and I and in the middle of that impasse,
Mhm.
You say yes because you're looking for satisfaction, but when you get to a point where you have reimagined success, you're okay with stepping back and going, I know I said that I would do that, or I know I
Mhm.
said that I would show up, or I know I said that I would do this, but that's just not a good idea for me, or I just can't. And you don't have to actually give an explanation. You're saying yes to yourself and not
Mhm.
and not no to them. That's really what you're doing. But if you're committed to the yes to them more than you're committed to the yes to yourself, then
Mhm.
it becomes you're still going to end up with an unhappy situation, because you done
Absolutely.
spent yourself, you done got depleted, and you didn't want to say yes anyway. You realize you shouldn't have said yes.
Mhm. And you can also extend that to people's finances. Sometimes, you might say yes to something and, later on realize I really don't have the money to do that. But I've given them my word and yeah, I will walk something back if I feel like I need to do it. I pray about it perhaps. And then other times I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to be able to do that. Like my finances are not what I want them to be, whatever the case may be. But I would say sometimes, yes, you have to choose yourself in certain situations, not to be selfish.
Hmm.
But I think if you start getting that agitation that that's not something you should be doing, this is not the right time for you to do it, then it's
Hmm.
okay for you to walk it back. That's how I look
Hmm.
at life. Like, yeah, I'm okay walking it back. Um, I
Yeah.
probably say more no's than I do yes. I'm gonna keep it real. Because I don't, yeah, I say no because sometimes I when things are so far in advance or
Hmm.
sometimes I'm like, let me think about that. Let me pray about that. Let me just get back
Hmm.
to you on it. So I don't
Hmm.
think you always have to say a yes or a no. You can operate on a maybe. Like, hey, can I get back with you on that? Let me think about that. Is okay we talk about this next week, or things like that. If people feel uncomfortable saying no, yeah, I've seen people get into interesting situations because they don't know how to say
Hmm.
no. Hmm.
Just today, as you were saying that, I responded to someone. They probably about a month ago. They asked me about connecting with me about something in the consulting part of my business, and I said, "Let me get back with you." I just got back to them. I didn't give them a time frame because what I learned a long time ago when we talk
Hmm.
about reimagining success is that if I give them a time frame, then I'm going to be concerned about sticking with that time frame. Well, I had so much going on last month that I didn't know what day and time that I was going to
Hmm.
circle back, and so I
Hmm.
just circled back and gave them the invite to do the just a free talk with me. But I even knew at that time I didn't 15 minutes was is something I did not have in the last 30 days prior to the day. So
Wow.
I didn't even give them the 15 minutes in itself. But if that had occurred 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I
Hmm.
would have immediately sent them the
Hmm.
link, made the follow up, etc. But that's because I'm learning. I have already learned to say yes to me. I used to be that person that said
Hmm.
yes and committed because I said yes. And when things
Hmm.
change, I'm thinking I need to keep my word. Well, I think that me not depleting myself is better for you than me showing up and not giving you 100%.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because you want to operate in excellence. I totally get that. I totally get it. I
Yep.
do like Shirley. I know you said you didn't create the acronym, happy. But I think it is your
Oh, I didn't
proprietary.
create how you spell happy. I created the
Okay.
acronym, but not how you spell happy. Yes.
Okay, so I was going to say that could be your proprietary framework for the work that you are actually doing with your coaching clients, and the divine happiness model, and just
Mhm.
like, yeah, I like it a
That's
lot.
what Dr. V does, y'all. That's what she does. Like, yeah, that's why when we have a conversation, it's usually a good hour or so. Like, there is never let's have a quick call because that's the gems that she throws out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I do. I like it a lot. I like everything that happy stands for. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vernell. So again, reimagining success is critical. If you're in the middle of that impasse, and how do you know you're in the middle of that impasse? You're restless and you're depleted at the same time. You're happy and uneasy. You feel underutilized, but everything about you says that I'm successful and I'm not underutilized. You feel burnt out. You're anxious. When I described that social anxiety that I was going through, you feel any of that, then I need you to give yourself a gift and show up to the free masterclass, Reimagining Success, on next Wednesday, the 29th at 7 p.m. The link is right here on the screen. Dr. Vernell, what are your last words for the everyone that's going to be viewing the replay, everyone that's live with us now? What are your last words?
Mhm. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that in the kind of like in the context of, again, your happiness model. That there is such a huge difference between situational happiness and divine happiness. And if you find that you are at this impasse, that you are stuck, that you feel undervalued, unfulfilled, and uncertain, then I strongly recommend and highly encourage people to take advantage of the free masterclass that you are offering, Shirley. So that's a plug for you. And then, kind of like, outside of that, I would say reimagine your success through the lens of God's eyes and not what you see operating in the world. Because it will always feel like a rat race. And when it feels like a rat race, you'll feel like you can never keep up. You're never going to be good enough. You're not going to be ready enough. And that's going to lead to a lot of unhappiness in your life. Versus when you connect to your soulful or your divine happiness, right? There'll be so many places of fulfillment, even when all hell is breaking loose in your life. So that's kind of like what I would say.
Thank you, Vernell. I appreciate you, V, for joining me tonight in the
Absolutely.
June Wednesday series, Reimagining Success. Good night, everybody.
Good night.